Hi guys, Joe here, and welcome to 750 Gaming. In this one we'll bust some myths and think about what we'll really need to get started in 10th edition 40k, especially if this is going to be your first foray into the world of miniature wargaming. Okay, so you're new here, and by here I mean the destination that is the tabletop miniature hobby. You've heard about Warhammer 40k and you've been wooed by excited noises about the upcoming releases and the hype coming out of the internet, or your weird nerdy mates who play with toy soldiers of an evening, and you're wondering if it's something you want to give a go. Well, welcome. Resistance is futile. You will be assimilated. But where do you start? What do you actually need? Let's bust some myths and take this hobby back to basics. After all, if this is your first foray, you need to work out whether it's worth spending all your money on. Firstly, you're going to need some miniatures. But let's face it, the plastic ain't cheap. The new Super Starter box set that's about to land for 10th edition Warhammer 40k will theoretically have everything you need plastic-wise for a complete intro into this game. And it'll all be in one big box. But even at the lowest estimate, which is a sensational quote I got from the guys at my local Warhammer store, it's looking at 150 quid. A bargain for what's inside, but it's still 150 quid. And then you get an awful lot of stuff to probably be overwhelmed by if you aren't sure that this thing is for you. So my advice is start small. Officially, you can get yourself a well-titled Getting Started set from Games Workshop. It'll give you 3 miniatures, which is currently either Space Marines or some Necrons, but I imagine there'll be some Tyranids in a new box in a few months, a paintbrush, and the appropriate paints you can use to make them look like the box art, or, a bit like the box art, or whatever. And these currently retail from Games Workshop at $22.50. Now, don't worry what your miniatures turn out like at the first try. Some of us aren't naturally gifted and we need to work at it and practice, just like anything else we have to do in life. But the main question is, did you enjoy it and do you want to do it again? £22.50 in my book is okay to spend to work that out. And you might even be able to get those boxes cheaper if you look elsewhere. And then you'll know whether and how much you want to invest in this hobby. But say time, money, space, life is an issue, and you can't or don't want to invest as heavily as some others can or want to, what are the essentials? Brushes. Do you need decent brushes? Well, what do you mean by decent? There are 100 million brands and brushes in the world, and some more specialist brands that are made and marketed for this hobby. But there are a few basics that need attention. Is the brush comfortable to hold? And does the brush hold a tip so that you can paint precisely, or as precisely as your ability currently allows anyway? When I first started, I bought these cheap brushes off of Amazon, and they were absolutely fine. When they started getting tired, I asked someone to buy me some new ones as a birthday gift, and I received a lovely set of army painted brushes, and I thought, here we go, let's level up. I also happened to have picked up a budget paintbrush set in Lidl for a £5 around about the same time, and I bought that from the middle aisle purely because I wanted the case wallet thing that they came in for brush storage. I was content to farm out the brushes to my kids to play with, but after trying out a few of the new cheaper ones and a few of the army painted ones, I was shocked and surprised. There was not a lot of difference. In fact, in my army painter set, it turned out that the regiment sized brush was actually absolute junk, whereas the cheap one of equivalent size was, and still is, pretty perfect. Go figure. The one I will swear by is the character brush from the army painter set, and I use it all the time. But just because you've spent a lot of money on a branded paintbrush doesn't guarantee it's actually going to be any good. You can spend very little and still have a really good painting experience. I have tried the dry brushes that came in the set, but I actually prefer makeup brushes and other soft round brushes for that purpose, and considering I dry brush the majority of my highlights on my miniatures at the minute, let that be telling. Do I need special paints? Well, yes and no to this one. You can obviously use whatever paint you like, but miniature hobby paint is optimised for this kind of thing. Viscosity, colour and pigment saturation, all that kind of thing. But there are loads of different brands out there, and it can get confusing. And whilst some people have reviewed and said that some brands are better than others, I think we're really talking about the tiny percentage gains here for those artists at the top of this hobby sphere. Personally, I use Citadel paints from Games Workshop because I live close to a Warhammer store and a friendly local gaming store that stocks them. If I didn't, and they stocked something else, I'd probably buy and use whatever else they stocked. Some paints are cheaper, some paints are more readily available, but let's be honest, if you were just getting into this for the first time, as long as it's a paint for painting miniatures, it'll do. Do you need an airbrush? No. Nope, you don't need one. Are they handy? Yeah, they sure look it. Are they decent? Yeah. Do you need one? Absolutely not. I don't have one. Could I level up my painting ability with one? Yeah, possibly, but I've still got a long way to go with just a paintbrush. It's up to you, but right now, I'd say don't bother. But what about priming? Well, yeah, you'll want to do that, and a lot of people will swear by an airbrush for priming, which, is great. You can use it indoors, but I just use a rattle can and batch prime my models outdoors as and when the weather is good to do so. Why do you need to prime? Well, essentially, it gives your plastic miniature, which is likely still covered in mould release chemicals and all sorts of nasty things, a nice adhesive undercoat, which sticks to the plastic miniature really well, and then allows your paint to stick to it just as well, which just makes the painting process far more enjoyable and gives the end product a bit of longevity. But you don't need to break the bank and get special branded paints here. As long as the primer is for plastic, then it's good and happily usable. For different colours, I go to Halfords here in the UK and get primer that's meant for spraying the plastic bits on your car, and it's perfect. And cheaper than a lot of the proper stuff that you will get in hobby stores. But also, let me let you into a little life hack. If you want to prime in grey, which I do mostly, Poundland have cans of this stuff for £2.50, and there is nothing wrong with it at all. I have primed the majority of my models over the last year and a half with this stuff, and it just works and does the job. Do I need a wet palette? Again, yes and no. On the one hand, no, of course you don't. But I will caveat that with a yes, you do. Hobby paint can be cheap and some can be really expensive. But the fact of the matter is your paint is a consumable. When it runs out, you have to spend money to buy some more. Very rarely will you be going straight from pot to miniature. You'll always want to be filling it down on something. Please go watch a painting guide to find out all about that. And by thinning it down on a wet palette, your paint will stay active for longer. And that's to say, it won't dry out and you won't need to go back to the pot. So it will save you paint. And if you've blended your colours to make a new one, but you have to end your hobby session early before your model or models are done, then that colour will have a good chance of still being there and working again when you next get some hobby time, and you won't need to start blending that colour again from scratch. So I recommend you get one before too long. Now you can make your own, and there are a few videos on YouTube on how to do that. Tabletop Minions has a good one, but I'll be honest, but after I'd faffed around putting one together and all of that, I actually went and got an Army Painter one off of Amazon with a load of extra inserts for around 20 quid. And it's been one of the best things I've ever bought. Do I need specialist snippers and hobby tools? No. You want an X-Acto blade or scalpel of some sort, something where you can change the blade when it gets dull, because a sharp blade will just make your life and experience far better. But personally, I use a cheap-ass retractable thing that I got from B&Q, and it's never failed me. The snips I use for removing stuff from the sprues I got in Hobbycraft for less than a tenner, and my cutting board I got from there for a similar cost. You don't need a mould line remover. They don't do anything that the back of your knife, the blunt side, can't do, and you don't really need a painting handle either, no matter what Games Workshop tell you. Plastic shot glasses, and come on, you know you've got some somewhere, upside down with a splodge of blue tack on top will work perfectly. I don't have a desk or home setup. I have the corner of my utility room and possibly the kitchen table if I feel I need a bit more space. If you've got room in your home for a permanent setup, then go get all the gadgets. But I don't, so I don't bother, and I get plenty of enjoyment hobbying in this way. Okay, so that covers the hobbying side. What about gaming? If you do want to do the gaming bit of this hobby as well, then what will you really need? The rules. Well, yes, but you don't necessarily need to buy the book. You can, and it's often a really nice book with a ton of lore and pictures and info and stuff, but if you aren't interested and you just want the game mechanics, well, they're free to download. And what's better with this new edition is that Games Workshop has said everything that you need to play this game in its infancy will be free to download on release. So that's all the special rules, all the stats, everything that you could possibly want. And this is amazing news. Of course, you might not want to wait for 10th edition before you work out whether you find the game fun, and that's fair enough. Now, for us already in the hobby, 10th edition gameplay is probably going to feel quite different to 9th edition gameplay, which is a good thing, trust me. But you can probably get a decent feel from playing 9th edition still. A Warhammer store could be a great place to start, or find a local gaming club and go along and watch and ask questions. If that's all out, for whatever reason, then what I'd probably do is watch a few videos on YouTube to get an idea of how the game mechanics look and feel on the table. It's obviously not the same as playing the game, but you'll get a good idea. What army should I choose, and how do I build a competitive army? Well, competitive is all in the eye of the beholder. What do you want to achieve? Do you want to go and win tournaments? Well, then you'll want to research all the meta army builds to work out what models you need to buy and whatever to put in your army. But we're just about to have a great big rules reset, so no one knows what the meta's going to be for a while. Or do you just want to build an army that looks fun? If you think you're starting to like this hobby, then I'd suggest you just go with the latter. When the rules come out, just work out what you need to fulfill a legal detachment, that's to say army, and then go and have fun with your mates. Don't worry if it's trash. I mean, it's a game based on rolling dice, for goodness sake. Sure, you can play with the probability, but just go have some fun with some cool, goofy models that you enjoy painting and enjoy looking at, and then just let fate deal your hand. What do I play on? What about terrain? Well, yeah, you'll need some, but again, it's all going to be in the eye of the beholder. What do you need for immersion and enjoyment? You may find you want a perfectly landscaped battlefield to really enjoy and get into the game, which is fair enough, I can empathise with that. But also, if you're just getting started, then that sort of thing will take a lot of time to accrue. It will cost money and time to acquire, assemble, paint and get on the table. Even if you scratch build it, like I do, it's not quick, so try not to worry about it to begin with. Maybe find a gaming club, or if you've got into this via some friends who already have a setup, then great, go play there. But also, just get some bits up on your kitchen table. Some books here, some empty yogurt pots there. Maybe just play with your kids and let their imagination tell you what's what. Get rolling those dice and have some fun. Oh, and you don't need special dice either. Sure, they look nice, but they are for aesthetics only. This game can be played with bog standard 6-sided dice. You'll need a load of them and a way to kind of roll them separately for each side if you only have the one colour, but otherwise, that'll do. And a 50p tape measure will do the measuring job perfectly. So listen, it's your hobby. You spend as much on it as you want to. There are a few things that I've got because they are nice and I'm a bit further down the road enjoying this thing, and so I've treated myself, right? But you don't need them. And if you're literally working out whether this is something you want to invest a bit more into, then you aren't going to want to remortgage your house at the outset. Put it this way, the plastic is the expensive stuff. I mean, sure, you don't need to buy Games Workshop 40k miniatures to play 40k, but the chances are you'll probably want to. And even if you get the stuff cheaper for a third-party retailer or reseller, it's still going to be expensive. But that's the stuff you'll want to spend your hard-earned cash or pocket money on. The less you spend on the hobby side, and you really don't need to spend a lot, the more you can spend on your miniatures. Anyway, I hope this encourages someone to maybe dip a toe, and hopefully by taking some of these tips you can start a hobby journey that was possibly a little bit more overwhelming than it should have been. I'd love to hear from you if this was helpful for you in starting that journey, or if you're an older hat in the hobby and you've got any wisdom or thoughts to share that I've missed, then do leave your comments below as ever. And hopefully I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Let's go! As always, I just do this for fun and make these videos when I can. I don't have a regular release schedule, they just happen when they happen. So, if you want to make sure you don't miss a beat over the next few months and going forward, then hit subscribe so you can catch these when they come. If you enjoyed this or any of my other videos, then do hit that like button as it really helps boost my ego, and do come check me out on Instagram for all my hobbying updates. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next one.